What would you do if you discovered the person your child loved was actually lying about everything? Keep reading to find out what happened when I learned the truth about my son's girlfriend. My name is Linda, and I need to tell you about the scariest dinner party I ever hosted. It was the night I learned that my son's new girlfriend was not the person she pretended to be. It started on a cool evening in October. My son Michael, who is 35 years old, brought home his new girlfriend for the first time. Her name was Sophie Martin, and she was from France. Sophie was exactly the kind of person Michael had described to me over the phone. She was short, pretty, and dressed in beautiful clothes. She spoke English really well, with a nice French accent that made everything sound interesting. "Hello, Mrs. Anderson," she said, holding my hands gently. "Michael has told me so many wonderful things about you. I'm so excited to finally meet you." I liked her right away. Michael's other girlfriends had not been very nice to me. Some of them didn't even remember my name. But Sophie was different. She asked me questions about our family. She said my cooking was delicious. She even helped me clean the table without me asking her. Michael looked so happy during dinner. He kept smiling at Sophie and holding her hand. "Sophie can speak 5 different languages," Michael said proudly. "She's been teaching me French, but I'm not very good at it yet." "Oh, you're being too hard on yourself," Sophie laughed. Her eyes sparkled. "Your pronunciation is getting better every day." We all laughed together. I thought to myself that Michael had finally found someone special. Someone who was smart and kind. Someone who would stay with us for a long time. That good feeling lasted for about 1 hour. After dinner, Michael had to take an important phone call for his job. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when Sophie's phone rang. She answered it in French. Her voice was loud because she thought no one could understand her. "Here's something you need to know about me. When I was younger, I lived in France for 4 years. I worked there to pay for my college. My French is a little rusty now, but I can still understand it pretty well." And what I heard next made my heart beat fast and my hands shake. "Hi, Mom," Sophie was saying in French. "She seems harmless. Just an old lady who wants her son to be happy. She'd be easy to control once we get married." I froze. I was holding a plate in my hand, but I couldn't move. "The house is really nice," Sophie continued in French. "It's bigger than Michael described. And yes, there's definitely money in this family." She mentioned that his father left them a lot of money when he died. Sophie laughed. It was a cold, mean laugh. "Don't worry, I've already started planning how to get the inheritance. Americans are so emotional about family. This will be easy." My hands started shaking so badly that I almost dropped the plate. "Michael is perfect for this," Sophie said. "He's innocent, generous, and completely in love with me. Getting a green card will be simple once we're married. And the divorce will be even simpler once I get what I need. 2 years maximum. Then I'll go back to Paris with American citizenship and enough money to live however I want." The plate slipped from my fingers and broke into pieces on the floor. "Mrs. Anderson, are you okay?" Sophie appeared in the doorway. Her face looked worried and kind. It was a perfect act, especially since I had just heard her real plan. "Just clumsy," I said, bending down to pick up the broken pieces. "These old hands aren't as steady as they used to be." She hurried over to help me. Her movements were graceful and caring. "Please let me do this," she said sweetly. "You shouldn't have to clean up after making such a wonderful dinner for us." The situation felt crazy. This woman had just told her mother on the phone that she was going to trick my son and steal our money. And now she was helping me clean up broken dishes, like she actually cared about me. "I have a lot of experience with cleaning," she said with a small laugh. "I worked in hotels in Paris before I met Michael. It was hard work, but it taught me to appreciate when others do nice things for me." Another lie. She said it so smoothly that I almost believed her. Almost. Michael came back from his phone call. Sorry about that, he said. Work emergency. But it's all fixed now. He looked at us cleaning together and his face lit up like it was Christmas morning. Look at you too. You're already acting like family. Sophie stood up gracefully and threw away the broken pieces. Your mother is wonderful, she said to Michael. So warm and welcoming. I feel very lucky. She was good at this. Really good. Every gesture, every smile, every word was carefully chosen to make Michael believe her fake story. The story about being a grateful foreign girl who was impressed by American family values. I found my voice somehow. Well, aren't you sweet? I said. Michael's right. You do seem like family already. We sat down in the living room with coffee. Sophie told us stories about her life in France. The struggling artist story. The difficult childhood that made her appreciate Michael's stability. The dreams of building a life in America with the right person. Every word was calculated, designed to make Michael want to protect her and save her. And it was working perfectly. My son believed every single lie. His eyes were soft with the kind of love that makes smart people do really stupid things. Tell Mom about the visa situation, Michael said gently. She might be able to help. She's always been good at dealing with complicated paperwork. Sophie's eyes flickered for just a second, but her smile stayed perfect. Oh, it's complicated, but not urgent, she said. My tourist visa is good for several more months. Michael has been helping me understand the process for staying permanently. She paused at just the right moment, letting Michael fill in the romantic part without her having to lie directly. It was masterful. We're thinking about getting engaged soon, Michael said, taking her hand. Once Sophie is ready and comfortable with the idea of staying here permanently. How nice, I said. I was proud that my voice sounded steady. When you know, I suppose. Sophie looked down modestly. I never expected to find someone like Michael, she said. Sometimes the heart surprises us. Oh, my heart was definitely surprised tonight. Just not in the way she meant. Later, when Michael walked Sophie to her car, I stood at the window watching them hug. She was saying something that made him laugh. Probably another beautiful lie about their future together. He looked so happy, so hopeful. He had no idea that the woman in his arms saw him as nothing more than a way to get American citizenship and steal our family's money. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my late husband's office, looking through 40 years of family documents. I was trying to understand exactly what Sophie thought she was targeting. My husband Robert had been very careful with money. Our house alone was worth close to $800,000. We had investments, retirement money, and life insurance. It wasn't like we were super rich, but we definitely had enough money to interest someone like Sophie. What scared me most was how quickly she had figured out our financial situation. One dinner and she already knew about inheritance possibilities and had a timeline planned. This wasn't random. This was professional stealing. By morning, I had made 2 decisions. First, I would not tell Michael what I had heard. Not yet. He was so in love with her that any accusation from me would just push him closer to her. He would think I was a jealous mother who couldn't accept his happiness. I'd seen enough movies to know how that story ended. Second, I needed to know exactly who Sophie Martin really was. I started with the basics: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Her social media looked polished but thin. Mostly photos from the last year and a half. No deep history. No childhood friends or family members tagged in old posts. The few pictures from France were generic tourist shots that anyone could take. Her LinkedIn said she worked in hotel management in Paris, but the company names were vague. For someone supposedly in her late 20s with a career, her professional network was surprisingly empty. I was deep into internet research when my phone rang. It was Michael. "Morning, Mom," he said. "Thanks again for last night. Sophie couldn't stop talking about how wonderful you were." "I bet she couldn't." "She's lovely, sweetheart," I said. "I can see why you like her so much." "I'm thinking about proposing soon," he said. His voice was excited. "Maybe on Christmas. I know it's fast. But when it feels right, it feels right." Christmas. That was only 2 months away. My stomach dropped. "That's wonderful news, David," I said. "Have you thought about how you'll propose? Where you might do it?" As he talked about his romantic plans, I was calculating timelines in my head. If they got married quickly after the holidays, she'd have her green card application filed by spring. 2 years later, she'd be eligible for permanent residency. 2 years after that, full citizenship. Then the divorce. Carefully timed to take as much money as possible. 4 years. She was planning to systematically destroy my son's life over 4 years. "Mom, are you still there?" "Sorry, darling," I said. "Just thinking about how happy this makes me." The lie came easier than I expected. "Have you met her family yet?" I asked. "Her parents?" "Not in person, but we video chat with them sometimes," Michael said. "They live in the south of France. Her father used to be a teacher. Her mother works for the local government. Very traditional family, which is why she's being careful about the engagement timeline. They want to meet me properly first." Traditional family. If they truly existed, they were probably horrified by their daughter's plan to trick an American family. Or maybe they were part of the plan, too. "That sounds reasonable," I said carefully. "Maybe you should visit them before proposing. Really understand where she comes from." "Actually, they're planning to visit us next month," Michael said. "Sophie wanted them to meet you before we make anything official. She really values family approval." Of course she did. Meet the victim's family, charm the parents, make herself look like the perfect future daughter-in-law, then spring the engagement and rush toward marriage before anyone had time to ask difficult questions. After Michael hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen. I felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on me. I could hire a private investigator, but that felt like crossing a line that might damage my relationship with Michael. I could confront Sophie directly, but she was clearly skilled at lying. And I only had an overheard phone conversation as evidence. Or I could be patient. Play the long game. Let her think she was winning while I gathered the information. I needed to expose her completely. That's when I remembered my sister's youngest daughter, Emily, who worked for the government in visa services. "Aunt Linda, you're putting me in a very difficult position," Emily said carefully. "We were having lunch at my favorite restaurant, though I wasn't really eating my salad. I'm not asking you to do anything wrong," I said, stirring my iced tea slowly. "I just want to understand the general process. For educational purposes." Emily laughed despite herself. "Educational purposes, right? And this has nothing to do with Michael's mysterious French girlfriend. You always were too smart," I said. Emily leaned back in her chair, studying my face. "Tell me what you know," she said quietly. "Everything." So I did. The overheard phone conversation, the Finn's social media presence, the convenient backstory that hit all of Michael's emotional buttons. Emily listened without interrupting. Her face grew more serious with each detail. "There are red flags," she admitted when I finished. "The timeline is aggressive. The background seems superficial. And frankly, the whole story sounds like something from the manual on marriage fraud indicators." "There's a manual?" I asked. "Oh, honey, there are several," Emily said. "Immigration fraud is big business. We see variations of this pattern all the time. The difference is usually how sophisticated the person is. Emily pulled out her phone and showed me a government website. Look at this checklist, she said. How many boxes does she tick? As we went through the indicators together, my heart sank. Sophie wasn't just suspicious. She was practically a textbook case of marriage fraud. Red flags everywhere. Rushed timeline. Financial motivation. Limited verifiable background. Age gap that favored the immigrant. Emotional manipulation of the American partner. The thing is, Emily continued, knowing something and proving it are very different challenges. These people are professionals. They've studied American men. They know exactly which buttons to push. And they're very good at covering their tracks. So what would you do? I asked. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Officially, I'd advise Michael to slow down. Do proper research. Insist on meeting her family in France before making any commitments. And unofficially, I'd gather evidence. Document everything. And I'd be prepared for the possibility that by the time you have proof, it might be too late to prevent the marriage. But not too late to minimize the damage. The damage. My son's broken heart. His financial losses. His ability to trust love again. The effects could last years, maybe forever. There's something else you should know, Emily said carefully. If she's doing this professionally, Michael probably isn't her first target. These operations often work the same way. Use similar methods. There might be other victims. Other sons. Other families destroyed by Sophie's fake charm. The thought filled me with a cold anger I'd never felt before. How would I find them? I asked. Very carefully, Emily warned. And completely legally. But if there are patterns of behavior, they leave traces. Immigration applications, marriage records, divorce proceedings. It's all public information if you know where to look. By the time we finished lunch, I had a plan. It wasn't a nice plan. And it wasn't a simple plan. But it was thorough. If Sophie Martin was a professional con artist, she was about to discover that Linda Anderson wasn't nearly as harmless as she appeared. That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to a private investigator Emily had recommended. Someone who specialized in background verification with excellent discretion. The second was to my lawyer. I updated my will and set up some additional financial protections that had nothing to do with Sophie and everything to do with being prepared for any outcome. The third call was the most important one. Michael. Sweetheart, I said. I've been thinking about what you said. About Sophie's parents visiting next month. Yeah, what about it? Well, I'd love to host them for dinner, I said. A proper welcome to the family. And you know what? I think I should practice my French before they arrive. Maybe take a refresher course. I'd hate for them to think I wasn't making an effort. The private investigator's name was Robert Chen. He looked nothing like what I'd expected. No detective coat or hat. Just a mild-mannered man in his 50s who could have been anyone's accountant. Which, as it turned out, was exactly the point. The best investigations happen when nobody realizes they're being investigated, he explained. We were sitting at my kitchen table with a folder and coffee. Especially in cases like this, where the subject is already watching for potential problems. It had been 2 weeks since I'd hired him. The preliminary results were bad. Really bad. Let's start with what we know for certain, Robert said, opening his folder. Sophie Martin entered the United States on a tourist visa 8 months ago. The address she listed on her arrival documents is a short-term rental apartment that she left after 6 weeks. Right around the time she would have met your son. So she came here specifically to find a husband, I said. It's looking that way, Robert agreed. The pattern suggests systematic targeting rather than a natural relationship. He pulled out a series of photographs. These are from her social media activity, he said. In the month before she left France, she was researching American dating apps, joining international relationship sites, participating in forums about American immigration law. The photos showed Sophie at her laptop in coffee shops in Paris. Always alone. Always working on something. Even in casual shots, there was something calculating in her expression. Here's where it gets interesting, Robert continued. The company she claims to have worked for in Paris. It existed, but it went out of business 3 years ago. The references she provided Michael are fake. The phone numbers go to a voice service that plays pre-recorded messages. My coffee grew cold as Robert laid out the evidence of Sophie's lies. Fake employment history. No verifiable address in France for the past 2 years. And most damning of all, a pattern of social media connections that suggested she'd been in contact with other American men before settling on Michael. There's more, he said quietly. I found evidence of at least 2 previous attempts at marriage fraud. Different names, different stories, but the same face. And the same methods. He slid 2 more photographs across the table. The first showed Sophie with a man in his 40s outside a courthouse in Nevada. The second was from a wedding announcement in a small newspaper in Colorado. It featured Marie Fontaine and her American husband. Both marriages lasted less than 2 years. Both ended in divorce with significant financial settlements. Both men were now dealing with debt and emotional trauma while she disappeared with American citizenship and their money. I stared at the photographs, feeling sick. Michael doesn't know, I whispered. Michael knows what she's told him, Robert said, which is a carefully constructed fiction. But Mrs. Anderson, there's something else you need to understand. This isn't just fraud. It's organized crime. We're dealing with someone who has destroyed multiple families and shows no signs of stopping. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in around us. What do I do with this information? I asked. Robert leaned forward, his expression serious. That depends on what kind of outcome you want. Do you want to save Michael from making a terrible mistake? Or do you want to ensure Sophie faces consequences for what she's already done? Both, I said without hesitation. I want both. Then we need to be very strategic, Robert said. Moving too fast could scare her into disappearing before Michael realizes what's happening. Moving too slow means watching the fraud proceed on schedule. Robert pulled out a timeline chart. She's planning to introduce her parents next week, he said. Probably actors hired to play the role. The engagement will happen shortly after that. A Christmas proposal that gives them just enough time for a New Year's wedding. New Year's? I asked. Tax advantages, immigration timing, and emotional manipulation, Robert explained. All wrapped up in romantic symbolism. It's textbook. Robert closed his folder and looked at me directly. The question is, are you prepared to play a longer game than she is? That evening, I sat in my garden watching the sunset. Somewhere across town, Michael was probably having dinner with his fake girlfriend, discussing wedding plans and dreaming about their future together. And next week, I would sit across from fake parents, speaking my rusty French and pretending to believe in a love story that was nothing more than an elaborate con. But Sophie Martin had made one crucial mistake in targeting our family. She'd assumed that a 64-year-old widow would be easy to fool, too polite to question, too grateful for her son's happiness to look too closely. She was about to learn that assumptions could be very dangerous. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m. I smoothed my dress one final time before answering. Sophie stood on my porch, next to an elegant older couple who looked like they'd been hired from a movie casting company. Mrs. Anderson, Sophie said with a bright smile. I'd like you to meet my parents, Henry and Margot Martin. Henry stepped forward with old-fashioned courtesy. He took my hand and kissed it lightly. "Madame Anderson," he said with a perfect French accent. "We are so honored to meet the mother of the man who has captured our daughter's heart." His French accent was perfect. His mannerisms were exactly what you'd expect from a retired teacher from southern France. Margot hugged me warmly. She smelled of expensive perfume and spoke in rapid, enthusiastic French about how wonderful it was to finally meet me. They were good. "Really, really good. Please come in," I said in my deliberately rusty French. I apologize for my poor pronunciation. It's been many years since I spoke your beautiful language. The effect was immediate and telling. Sophie's eyes flickered with something that might have been concern. Her fake parents exchanged the briefest of glances. They hadn't expected me to speak French at all. And they definitely didn't expect me to catch that their accents were from Paris, not southern France. Michael arrived as we were settling in the living room. He brought wine and flowers and was practically glowing with happiness. "Aren't they wonderful, Mom?" he said. "I feel like I've gained a whole new family." As the evening went on, I played my part perfectly. The charmed future mother-in-law, delighted with these lovely people, asking gentle questions about their life in France, expressing how happy I was that Michael had found such a wonderful woman with such a strong family. But I was also listening, really listening, and what I heard confirmed every suspicion Robert Chin had raised. Henry's stories about his teaching career were generic and vague, the kind of details anyone could make up from internet research. Margot's descriptions of her government work contradicted themselves within the same conversation. Most telling of all, when they spoke to each other in French thinking I couldn't understand their casual conversation revealed knowledge and references that belonged to Paris, not southern France. "Pass the salt, would you?" Margot said in French to Henry. "This American food is so bland." "At least the wine is decent," Henry replied, also in French. "Though I miss proper cheese. These Americans have no taste." Meanwhile, in English, they were praising my cooking and expressing delight at experiencing authentic American hospitality. But the moment that confirmed everything came during coffee service. Michael had stepped into the kitchen to help me serve dessert. Sophie spoke quietly to her fake parents in rapid French. "She's harmless but not stupid," Sophie said. "Keep the details consistent and don't get too comfortable. We're almost at the finish line." "The son is completely hooked," Henry replied in French. "When do you want to do the proposal timeline?"